Let's talk about something else that's happening in the country. And this week is all about safety globally. And we're seeing the conversation that's taking place across. So I want to read you a story that's in the Standard today. See, you show me that page. It was here. Page 15, Standard Group marks World Day for Safety Health at the Workplace. Okay, Caleb Otieno, Rosa Agutu, who's written this story, starts with the story of Caleb Otieno, who died after he was trapped inside a boiler at a steel manufacturing factory in Thika, Kiambu. You remember that story? Mm-hmm. Where it was believed that the 34-year-old fell into the boiler after the gloves that he had on got stuck in one of the rods that he was pushing into the boiler. That just put him in there. His death is a reminder that this year's World Day for Safety and Health at Work is marked in the backdrop of constant need to control elements that can cause harm and accidents at work. Indeed, according to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, the main goal of safety and health programs is to prevent workplace injuries, illnesses, and deaths. Safety is a big thing. We talk about safety in the workplace, safety at home as well, and safety everywhere. One of the things when you hear of safety is you also think about fire. And fire is big. Fire is misunderstood. There's a story on page 3 of the Standard again today, where 4 children aged between 3 and 7 died in a fire accident in Nyandarua County. They were sleeping when their wooden house caught fire and was raised on Tuesday night. The parents of these 4 children were not in the house. It was not known exactly what happened. The fire started around midnight, according to the neighbors. The neighbors said they tried to save the children, but unfortunately the fire was so fierce and the children had locked themselves inside, making it hard to access the house. Strong winds also assisted the fire to spread. So you can imagine, these adults have left their kids. Maybe they've gone to work, both of them, at night. And you've left your children aged between 3 and 7. And you're called by your neighbors and you're told there's been a fire in your house and that all your children have died. All of them. And that just, brings this whole story into perspective. And that's why we want to talk about fire prevention and safety tips for the home and the office. And joining us for this conversation is Richard Nyaga. Richard is a business development manager at an organization called Flammatech Limited. Richard, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. This is the Situation Room. That is a hot seat. You deal with fire. So I don't know whether you know how to put out these kind of fires that we're about to light for you. It's about Flamatech and Flamatech Limited. Tell us about this organization. Who is Flamatech and what do you do?
Good morning, listeners. I'm Richard Nyaga, the Business Development Manager at Flammatech. Flammatech is an organization that deals with fire safety, a one-stop shop for fire, meaning everything about fire safety from A to Z, meaning from as simple gadget as a fire extinguisher to as complicated as a fire suppression system. We take across the board anything to do with fire safety.
An extinguisher does not suppress fire?
It does, but there are various types of extinguishers, and many people don't know about it. So we want to be learning something today.
Well, we are among those people who do. As far as I'm concerned, an extinguisher is a suppressor. So now, and now you've complicated this matter further by telling us there are many types of extinguishers.
Yes.
Next, you'll tell us there are many types of suppressors.
Or there are many types of fires.
Yes.
So, as basic as it may sound, there are different types of fire, and every other fire depends on how you fight it. The main types of fire that we know are organic fires. These are fires normally on paper, wood, the common items that we have on our daily lives, paper, wood, timber, charcoal. Those are normally fires that can be fought with basic water. Then if you're looking at more advanced kind of fires, we have combustible liquids, for example, petroleum. We have combustible gases, for example, methane. We have combustible metals, something if you're looking at lithium, magnesium. We have combustible oils, for example, cooking fat. So all these, you need a special kind of knowledge to fight you cannot use water to fight petroleum because all they have different kind of combustible elements. Meaning, to make it in a simpler way, there are different types of fire, meaning the three elements that are needed for fire to occur are one, heat, there needs to be oxygen, the substance, and also the ignition. For instance, for wood, you just need to ignite. The wood is the substance and oxygen. So for you to use water, water suppresses water by cooling effect. It cools, that means it removes the heat. For you to have to extinguish fire, you need to remove one of the elements, either oxygen, heat, or the substance. So when you're fighting fire using water, you're just cooling the effect, removing heat. That means it suppresses the fire.
Okay. What are the most common fires that we see? I mean, if we're talking about locally here, what are the most common ones that we see?
The most common fires are organic. That means which are, but basically the normal things we use every day, like wood, paper, bedding materials in houses, those kind of things. And more so, there are other class B fires, which are combustible liquids. That's for petroleum. We've seen these incidences, petroleum, and those are the most common.
And are they domestic, or are we looking at within industry?
It cuts across the board because the same materials that we have in our offices could be at times we are the same we have at home. For instance, we have wooden desks at offices. The same we have furniture at home. Right.
You know, when you talk about the elements that are required for fire to actually be the fire that we know, I want to go back to the question that Ndu asked. One of the things that we faced a couple of years ago were what we refer to as school fires. Fires being, schools being burnt by students within the school.
All right.
Now, one, those schools are boarding schools, they have mattresses.
All right.
These mattresses, some of them are made from petroleum products.
True.
Yes. Then, oxygen is in plenty, there's no question about it.
Right.
And as for the element of lighting it, now, let me ask, when you talk to institutions like schools, boarding schools, or any institution that has students who live within it, what are the things that you tell them or educate them about ensuring safety from fires?
When you come to institutions, I'd like to classify it in two categories. One, the fires that we've been witnessing, those were elements of arsonists. The children turns rowdy and they cause a fire. But in a normal situation where there is a fire outbreak, which is caused by other than human element, then we tackle it by having trained people within the organization who can be fast responders. These are normally called fire marshals. They are cut across offices, homes. Not homes. Organizations and offices, they normally have fire marshals. These are people who are trained to be either proactive and, again, active, depending on the situation. But when you go to schools, you find in the dormitories, there could be matrons or minders who stay with these children. They should be trained. This is in a case where the fire is not intentional. But where it is intentional, now we come to active part of fighting it.
You know, when you say this, you mentioned about there being a human element in all this, and I was thinking, in what sort of fire is there no human element?
There are many instances. For instance, if there is an electrical fault, there is no human element.
There is. There's a human being who should have ensured that electrical system did not have a fault and they didn't do their job.
Definitely. That I agree. But what I mean by human element is that the person who is doing the trigger, the one who is igniting.
I've just mentioned the trigger, that person.
Exactly.
Yes.
So you find most of the fires that we have, they're causes of fire.
Yes.
Fires don't just happen.
Yes.
They are causes. So one could be using of defective equipment, cables, using defective equipment, low standard equipment. Then you find the usage of these equipment. For example, you want to charge your phone and you want to use it. So that puts the battery on very, very high activity mode, which may burst into flames. Yes. So most of these are human triggered, but not directly.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. What I mean, so when we're looking, you talked about these fires, which we're discussing primarily, are spread across an industry, and then domestic. Would you say that more or less people are prepared in the event that something would happen to be able to either, number one, protect themselves or then fight said fire? Because if a gas cylinder blows up, which by the way is something that is really common that we've seen, especially in smaller spaces, there are two things. One would run away or try and throw water on the thing. Do you find that people are ready in terms of response? And if not, what are things that people ought to know to do? Because when there's that emergency, the first thing that you're thinking is to evacuate the area, which is what we've been taught. But then here you're also wanting to salvage your things.
From my experience, fire sensitivity and it's quite low on our people. Very few people know what to do when fire happens. But my advice has always been, the first advice is don't panic. And if you panic, again, don't panic. Try not to panic, remain calm, because the moment you remain calm, you're able to think. Most people don't die or get injured by fire due to burning.
Okay.
They do it due to suffocation.
Okay.
So the moment at least you have your mind with you, you are able to think, you are able to view where is the exit or the best action, then it may save a life. For instance, you just mentioned if a gas explodes and someone is thinking about throwing fire, that will escalate the fire. Throwing water onto the fire, that will escalate. But at least if you are calm enough, you would know for gas fire, you don't use water.
What do you use? I guess
you need to use foam. Then it means, do you have a foam cylinder with you? So it means it starts from awareness.
Okay.
The most common types of cylinder people know, they think there is only water inside, and that they would rush to take up the cylinder and direct it to the fire if they have the courage to do that. But normally in real life, you find in case of danger, there are always two options.
Yeah.
Either you fight it or you run.
You flee.
Yes.
But then, again, are we prepared? Because here we're looking at certain things that government directives in terms of, we just spoke about it, for example, this morning, that the government requires that houses being built after a certain time then must have a solar element for heating water. Are we going to that extent where we say that then houses must have fire safety requirements in their homes? Foam extinguisher, water extinguisher, carbon dioxide extinguisher. What are we saying that now must be a directive? It's like insurance. You may never use it, but you're going to have it there just in case something happens. Actually,
that's something which is in our statutes and the occupational fire hazards and occupational safety. We have the laws that require, you have the prerequisite equipment for firefighting. But having the law and having the equipment are two different things. You find in my business dealings every day, you go and you're trying to pitch for a business. And the most common question that comes across is, I've been here for 50 years. I've been here for 40 years or 100 years. This is the fourth generation business, but we have never seen a fire.
Yeah.
But you find someone asking, oh, maybe you are planning to put up one. So
do you want to come
down? That's why you want us to buy these things.
Yeah. So definitely we are not prepared. People, I wouldn't want to say ignorant, but the education levels of fire safety are quite low. Then the value addition to fire safety, even to trainings, people don't get direct benefit from investing in fire safety, because you cannot correlate it directly or put that kind of money you're investing in either training or equipments directly into business.
Sure.
This capital which is grounded, you cannot recover from it. So people prefer investing this money where it can bring back results, other than just keep extinguishers there and don't use them for 20, 30 years.
It's true, but it's just like taking insurance.
Yeah.
But you'll find that very many organizations will take up insurance, whether it's workman compensation or whatever, because it's a requirement by law. And yet they'll run away from putting up fire safety and fire safety measures, which is also a requirement by law. What is it? Is it about enforcement?
Exactly. It's about enforcement and people cutting corners. But Of late, you've seen a good kind of initiative, especially with commercial buildings coming up in upmarket areas. The clients themselves are quite sensitive. And we've seen a trajectory, especially in sales of, for example, detection systems. And because these clients are well informed, they don't want to risk in an apartment which is not safeguarded. So it's something that's coming up, but now it cuts across the divide. When you go to low-end areas where they are putting apartments, commercial business malls, you don't find these equipments. But on the upper end, you will find them. So there's a lot of enforcement that needs to be done.
Maybe actually even in the upper end of the market is because of other requirements. Your financier, the bank has told you we need to see that you've actually secured this building, so that we minimize the risks of fires and other such things. Your insurance, you've taken up insurance. Insurance has told you, I'm not insuring your building until you show me all the safety measures you've put in place.
Definitely.
Which is not what's going to happen in the other sector of the market.
True.
So when you talk about firefighting and you say, okay, so typically in a home, you need to think of fire safety. You need to have maybe fire detectors and firefighting equipment. Are there some fire extinguishers that are more universal than others? You've said, for example, water. I'm not going to use it on gas. I'm not going to use it if it's an electric fault, and I don't know whether it was an electric fault. So which one is the best to use that can cover at least more ground?
I'd say the more universally acceptable is as water-based fire extinguishers, which are common because the organic elements are all over. We have desks at home, we are at offices, we have beddings at home, we have furniture. So it cuts across the board. Then I would advise, if you want to safeguard your property, maybe at home, it's good to have a water-based and a foam-based. Foam meaning you can fight gaseous fires. And the normal one fire, you will use the normal organic whatever. But because you cannot be able to have all, also because the kind of sensitivity and education about them, it needs to be done. You just, as a layman, you will not be able to understand.
Oh, so we need to have fire extinguishers in our homes?
Definitely. It's important. Actually, there are some things as basic as a fire blanket. Fire blanket is used in the kitchen, maybe in domestic kitchens or even commercial kitchens. That's like first aid for fire. The moment the fire goes haywire over the cooking range, you just need to place that blanket over it and put it out. That's a first attack measure, even before you can go to the extinguisher. So the person who attends to that kitchen should be aware how to use it.
The thing that I'm asking is, yes, one sees fire extinguishers in institutions like schools. But what about getting people to understand, A, how it is used, and also getting their children to be inculcated into understanding some of these measures at an early stage?
Normally, as per the law, there should be fire marshals in each and every organization. These fire marshals are the people now who conduct fire drills. Fire drills are basically, in case of fire, what are you supposed to do? What procedures are you supposed to follow? These are the people who teach. They are the teachers of people in an organization. So this is an investment that should be done. Even in schools, there should be fire marshals.
Who trains fire marshals and what are they trained in?
Fire marshals are trained by now trained officers from Directorate of Health and Occupational Safety. Yes, these are licensed trainers. And they train them, one, in first aid, in drills, like for instance, when there is a fire here, what are you supposed to do?
Run.
You need to run, but where are you running?
Away.
Do you need to run?
You need to run, but you need to. The fire marshal will know where the exits are, where the fire doors are. He knows when to close the fire doors, when to put on emergency lighting. Are the people in the organization aware of where the fire assembly is? After that, he need to do a clean sweep to know, have all the people been evacuated? Because we could be having people on wheelchairs, we could be having pregnant mothers. Are they able to run? How were they saved?
That's true. Let's continue this conversation shortly after this break. 27 to 8, Kenya's biggest conversation, World Day for Safety. And we're having a conversation with Richard Nyaga, who's a business development manager at Flammatech Limited. It's a company that deals with fire and fire safety information, and also, of course, selling fire safety equipment. He's teaching us about fire, we need to know about fire, and how to put out the fires that we see in our lives. Yesterday's proverb was what? No matter how hot your
the
anger.
it cannot cook yams.
26 minutes to 8.
This is the Situation Room.
The conversation continues. Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, CT Muga, and our guest Richard Nyaga from Flammatech Limited. We are talking about safety in the workplace, safety at home, safety everywhere. And Richard is here to tell us about fire.
Richard, so in terms of response, I mean, just trying to think, the assumption is that state would provide fire services, but then unfortunately we've seen the horror stories of, no water, arriving late, etc., etc. That has then seen the birth of many private companies who've then gone into the business to be able to offer these services if need be. What should it be? Should it be that you have very many private fire engines, that fire service, for example, to take care and just be on standby, or you depend on the public outfit?
My view is that safety starts with you. And before a state can provide safety for you, you should have taken some basic measures. I think it is important for us to privatize firefighting services, and each and every organization or zone should have its own firefighting equipments. For instance, if you've seen the county responses to fire, due to lethargy or at times you may not understand why the fire it takes so much time to come over. It comes sometimes empty. You may never understand. Could be lethargy, but if this is privatized, if it's a business, then I don't think any business owner would entertain that. So normally it's always government to catch up. Government plays catch up with the private businesses. So I think it's very important to allow private organizations to have their own fighting equipments.
Yeah, and even as we say this and we talk about what you should do for safety being provided at home, there's the assumption that everybody can go ahead and do that, right? So if you live in a flat or if you live in a home, maisonette, etc., the assumption then is that you have the wherewithal to have this basic provision of fire safety equipment. However, we have seen that very many times for many of the fires in the country, they're in places whereby the spaces are much smaller and they're much more crowded. I mean, Gikomba Market has burnt down I don't know how many times in the last 4 years. We've had places where it's one-room homes that are then suffering from these fires. The assumption also is that they don't have the wherewithal to have this basic fire safety requirements. How do we handle such?
This comes again to regulation, because in an ideal system, there should never be such crowded places. But again, this is a reality that we have. So it means it starts with you. It's you who is living in that crowded place to know what to do when those kind of things happen.
Oh, come on. We're looking at survival here. The people who are looking to have a place to sleep so that they can stand up at 5 a.m. and walk where they're going. Probably in terms of priority, a fire extinguisher is the last thing on their mind.
Yeah, but you see those kind of people, or in that kind of settlement, safety is last of the in at the last of part of their mind.
Yes.
So they have more things to worry about. And now there should be some element of help from the state. For instance, if it's let's say Mukuru or somewhere like that, there should be a fire engine close by. Provided by the state, because these people may want to have the equipment, but they are not able.
They don't afford it.
Then, the first role of government is to protect life and property. So this goes back, the buck stops with the government to provide this kind of assistance to these people.
Let me ask you a mundane question. Gas cylinders, the one that we normally, the red ones, how much do they actually retail for?
Starts from 1,300.
1,300.
Right.
What's the capacity?
That should be 6 kg.
6 kg.
Right.
Now, what sort of fire can a 6 kg?
You said gas? Do you mean a fire extinguisher?
I meant there's a gas.
Yes, you did. Sounds a bit
I
confused.
meant
You mean the LPG?
no. I meant extinguisher.
Extinguisher.
Forgive
Okay.
me.
Okay. I was so confused. Okay.
Gas is. Forgive me.
Yeah,
I
okay.
meant extinguisher.
All right.
All right. What sort of fire is that capable of putting out?
Come up again.
All right. We have these
the red
extinguishers.
thingy.
The red
With
the
thingy.
black nozzle?
Yes,
This
those
is
ones.
a
Yes.
6 kg.
6 kg.
What's inside it?
Yes.
First of all.
Now, I think what we need to do is to start from somewhere.
Yes.
There are basically more 4 types of firefighting extinguishers.
Excellent.
One is water, and you find on the cylinder it's always marked with a bright red. There is a bright red label. That means it's a water cylinder.
Okay.
We have foam. Foam, it's called AFFF, aqueous film forming foam. That is alcohol resistant kind of foam.
Right.
It's always marked on the cylinder with a cream color. All right.
Okay.
The third type is called ABC, or dry powder. It's usually marked with a blue label on the cylinder.
Okay.
Then there is carbon dioxide. It's marked using a black label. So you need to know the kind of fire you're fighting to use the right equipment, the right extinguisher. Because if you try fighting combustible liquids like petrol using water, you escalate the fire. You'd rather leave it the way it is.
The reason why I ask, in fact, you've done a wonderful thing in taking the direction that you've gone to. So if one was looking for firefighting equipment for a domestic setup,
Right.
what then would you choose?
For domestic setup, depends. Nowadays, we've seen so many people setting up offices in their homes. Or
Yes.
having as basic as a laptop and a small office.
Yes.
Then you need carbon dioxide, because carbon dioxide kind of extinguisher fights electrical fires.
As well.
Then the basic organic, again, we go to the furniture, to the mattresses, to the blankets, to tables. You need water-based fire extinguisher, as basic as that.
Essentially, now we've moved from one fire extinguisher to now we're now at two.
We are at 2,
Okay.
depending on the setting. But if you don't have an office at home, then you can use organic-based, which is water.
Sindio.
How much these cost?
Starts from, depending on the category. For water-based, starts from 1,000 bob for 2 kg, 2 kilo. All the way, now it depends with the kind of capacity you want.
Yeah.
But starts from, let's say, basic from 1,000 shillings. Yes,
So if you had a 2-bedroom, for example,
right.
and you needed to get the two of them, the
Right.
water-based and the foam,
Foam or
the
carbon
yes,
or carbon dioxide.
or carbon dioxide.
Right.
So what capacity then are you looking at for a 2-bedroom home, if a flat kind of thing, if that was the
For a 2-bedroom, you'll need 9 kilo of water, which retails around 2,800, 2,800.
Okay.
Then you can have as small as 2 kilo of carbon dioxide at 3,750.
So if it was bigger, let's say you had a 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom kind of the house,
The capacity goes up.
it goes up obviously
right.
because now you're looking at covering more space.
But also, it's important to know where to place the extinguisher.
Right.
Because it's not important to put it in the bedroom. You need to put it in the hallway where it's accessible.
by everybody.
Right.
If there were 3 things that you could teach across board, assuming that you had a group of people who are okay, maybe for the office and also for the home. So the assumption is that everybody who works in an office is of sound adult mind. How or what are 3 things that you would need them to know about safety? And then taking that question further and saying, in the home, where there's this assumption that there could be younger children, but that there was something that they needed to understand also about fire safety, what would be the 3 things that you would say in a domestic home setting and in a work setting, and then maybe even a factory setting? What are things that people ought to know about fire safety that they could, get by with if they knew those 3 things across board?
If I may start in an office setting, and the 3 things, most key things is, you should know where the exits are. 2, you should know at least where the fire extinguisher is located. 3, you should know where the alarm bell is.
Okay.
You may help yourself and also others by knowing those 3.
The alarm bell is that place where it's written in case of
It's
fire,
called
break
glass.
glass.
break this glass. You should know at least, that's the most basic, everyone should know. Right.
Okay.
It may help you and also help others. Because, for instance, if you know where the exit doors are, you may show people, you may guide people out
Yeah.
through those doors.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
In a home setting, ensure the kind of equipment you are using of good standard. If you are building, don't go purchasing cables from every Tom, Dick and Harry. These cables are the ones that cannot carry a certain kind of amount of power, and they end up causing fires. Whenever you are there, because maybe there's always a surge, maybe the power had gone and comes back at a higher voltage. These are the kind of cables that burn our houses.
Yes.
Second, it's always good to ensure when you're leaving the house, like gas is put off, the switches are off. If there are kids in the house and maybe you want to leave, you can turn off the lights from the mains, so that even if they are playing with the sockets, there is nothing that can happen.
Okay.
Right. That's in case you don't need lights. Maybe you're leaving for a short time or something of the sort. Then it's good to keep equipments that use electric in good working conditions. Right.
Right.
In an apartment block, what's the best place to position a fire extinguisher?
Fire extinguishers, they are always placed along the staircases, where we also have a house rail, because it's mandatory to have a house rail in an apartment block where everyone can access it. Everyone knows where they are.
This Australian story is just a story, though. What's it connected to? So you have that key thing there that you can
It's
see.
supposed to be connected to water, isn't it?
Normally,
Yes.
what happens is that the house rail is connected to a water source, which should have water always.
Should
This-
being the operative word here.
Yeah. This water is normally pressurized. It can be pressurized through gravity. That's why you have the tanks on the roof. Or if the tank is at the basement, then you need booster pumps to pressurize this water. Because if you have water and doesn't have pressure, then you cannot throw it to where the fire is.
Is it a building code requirement?
It is. Actually, no building should be, no occupation should be approved without this kind of equipments.
And so, apart from just the hose,
Right.
what else should you have? You
should-
should have a tank.
It's a must, because a house without water is useless.
Okay.
And you should also have water.
Constant.
And the source of water, it's recognized in law, is from the county government through the water company.
Not necessarily, because if maybe you've built an apartment block where there is no service water from the county, then you need to do a borehole.
You know, one of the things that is clear, you know where we're going with this question? We live in a town, let's talk about Nairobi, where water is a problem.
Right.
So if you have that hose and it's supposed to be attached to some water source, the source exists, but there is no water. So not useful. That's number one. Two, if you look at many of the buildings that comprise what we call apartment blocks, they don't even have what you call a fire exit. It is that one door, full stop. The rest are windows. And those are within the unit of the house or the flat.
Yep.
So in the event of a fire,
So it's a staircase.
but through that door that brings you into the house, there is no back
no
door,
back-
with back stairs, doesn't exist.
Yep.
Now, these are a result of, I'd say, break in rule of law or enforcement. But again, ignorance is no defense. It's us. It goes back to us. If you are renting that apartment, with all due respect, you should know. At least you should check.
Okay.
I know many people don't care about that at that point, but when it happens that one, you realize it was important.
You know, you made a statement earlier on, which is true of very many Kenyans, whether they're in the middle class or not. They are preoccupied with just staying alive.
Exactly.
So these are the things that we talk about. They will deal with them when they occur.
Exactly. And the costs.
Yes. They will deal with them when they occur. But it occupies too much of their mind, and it takes too much energy to deal with the very thing that we're saying. That takes me back to what I'd asked earlier on about making sure that this is a sort of knowledge that is part and parcel of children in school.
Exactly.
Because one of the things, this is a truism, things that you learn as a child, you rarely forget. Rarely. Now, imagine some of these safety measures when they are taught to children. They grow up knowing it and understanding it and internalizing it. If they're not taught as an adult, that information is going to be fighting with all the other things that they need to occupy their mind with. that thing is going to be taken to the backwaters completely, it will not be a priority.
I think it's a good question and it's a good observation. And actually, what happens nowadays is, if it's true that in Kenya right now we are in transition in our education system, introduction of CBC is the best thing that could have happened to our education system. Just like we were never taught about money, how to handle money and all those kind of things. Now this is being integrated into the CBC. As it evolves, then some of these things will be very necessary to be integrated so that children are taught from day one how to handle some of these situations. And the moment it's ingrained in their mind, they'll never forget about it. So I think it's work in progress. And registration should be there to enforce this.
You know why I mention you, since you're a business. You see, this is how you capture clients early in their lives. See, if someone is aware of this, when they're at an age where they can afford to, you will not really need to persuade them very much because they will understand the need. Or even when they can afford it, they will have it because they've understood.
Definitely.
So, apart from just the education sector doing what they do, those of you in the private sector, should you not also consider playing a part in this?
To be honest, we are considering a private bill for enforcement. Like, this something must be done. It needs to be done and enforced. Like, you cannot be given certificate of occupancy if you don't have the basic minimum requirement for this kind of equipment. It has happened in other countries in Africa, and I believe we can do it.
Is there an association of safety organizations in the country?
Ideally, yes, they are there. There are several, but I'd say they are still not yet out of the woods. They are trying to find their bearing. There are several. I wouldn't want to name
So currently,
them.
what are they? What are these associations doing? What do they do?
Mostly
Is it
they
just
deal.
welfare of the business? Is it advocacy?
No, mostly they deal with training, fire trainings as CSR activities, right? But also you find most of them are geared towards profitability.
Yeah.
Now that's where you cannot separate the two. Them being either business or a CSR kind of organization.
I mean, I think about organizations. I mean, I know here at the Standard Group, we have fire marshals. There are people who, I remember months ago when we did a fire drill here, it was clear who the marshals were. And the hope was that they knew where all the exits are and things like that. And every now and then you're reminded of who their names are. But then is there regular training for these marshals? It could be Standard Group today, somebody else tomorrow. Are there regular trainings for these marshals if we're looking at the working environment now and say, things have changed, or a little bit more information that you ought to know that will now trickle down to the rest of the people who work in the organization? And this is just taking a work environment where there are thousands of people, coming in and out on a regular basis. Is there regular training available for them?
Ideally, it should be done twice a year.
Okay.
But in an organization where the population is high, there are high traffics, then should be quarterly. And this is something that should be factored in the budget because it costs money. And we do that. We have organizations that do fire training, licensed, and they also license and they give certificates to these fire marshals. Yes.
Interesting observations. As you talk today to those who are watching and listening to you, and they're thinking, fire, when you talk about fire, so I have a business, county is going to come and demand that I have a fire license, and they'll ask me where the fire extinguisher is. That's it. At home, they never come. So we think of fire only because of complying with what the government wants you to do.
Right.
How would you change that conversation and the mindset so that we think of fire as completely something that we ought to be thinking of on a daily basis, that it's a daily risk?
Actually, I'd like to thank you especially for this opportunity because it starts here and it starts talking to our people about their own safety. And before someone else can secure you, you need to secure yourself. I think if need be, each and everyone should take time to understand about fire precaution, causes of fire, as a basic minimum for your own safety, because before someone can guarantee your safety. And as much as it's expensive, it's good to have this kind of equipment. I have a good friend of mine who I wouldn't name, but he does sell safety equipments. And the funniest thing is that his business was raced down by fire.
Oh. The equipment is in a store somewhere else.
Yes, and because these are most of them are plastic and liquefied kind of products, it took like 3-4 minutes to bring down the whole thing. But the funniest thing is that he does fire. He does fire equipments. He sells safety.
And he's
equipments.
aware about safety.
He is aware.
So it's not for lack of awareness.
No, it
It's
goes
not
back to
for-
ignorance. Someone telling you, I've been here for 100 years. This is a 6th generation business, but we have never seen a fire. So until it happens.
Wow.
So at some point, it's not that they lack awareness. They know, but since it hasn't happened to you or to somebody you know, then you think it always happens to others.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much, Richard. Richard Nyaga is a business development manager at Flammatech Limited. They deal in fire safety training, selling of equipment, and also helping people to understand more about fires. We've been talking about that World Day of Safety for Safety. When was it? Yesterday? Or is it today?
The entire this
Or
week.
is this the entire week?
Yeah, entire week.
So World Day for Safety is the week.
The week.
It's a week.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a week-long event.
World Day for Safety Week.
Yes.
Beginning with one day.
With the day, the day of week of safety.
There you go.